Good evening once again. This is Sunday Express, and tonight we're looking at gender-based violence. Not only talking about prevention, but now we're looking at if the worst happens, where do you seek help? Through which platform? And now we are joined by none other than Judith Oketch, who is a founder and CEO of Ambulex solution that is leveraging on technology to bridge that gap when it comes to seeking legal redress and also support for survivors. Thank you very much for your time. Apologies for Oketch.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, we already know that gender-based violence is quite a vice, and it's quite pervasive as it is, and it's calling for collective action. Let's address the fact that it has happened. What is my first line of action as a victim?
As a victim, first, you need to understand that they're already in a mental state. They do not know that, one, if I do call for help, will I actually be, beaten further? If I do call for help, will I actually get the help that I need? Because there are probably no mechanisms for me to get this help. The first probably thing that, because someone who's going through GBV, whether it's a man or a woman, is in a state where they're not able to know exactly what they want to do next. And so that's how we are coming in as Ambulex. The way we have built our app, it's in such a way that you only need to tap and no one is going to know that you're calling for help.
So it's, what can I say, incognito, so to speak?
It's incognito.
So the people I'm with, or even the person who is either beating me up or harassing me, will not know that I've actually called for help.
They will not know that you've actually called for help. And from our end, we can already see that you've requested for GBV support. So the thing we will not do is call you back. So how we go about it is we work with the police. So we communicate with the closest police station, because the app is GPS enabled. So we communicate to the closest police station, coordinate with our EMTs, the emergency medical technicians, the team that is responding, because we also want to ensure that at the end of the day we are taking care of you if you do have injuries or some traumas. So we also want to ensure that we're taking care of you in that way. So we will get to you without the perpetrator knowing that we are on our way.
Yeah. So question is, one would ask, how do I get this app? Is it toll-free? Is it a call? Is this an SMS line? Is it online? Because we're looking at the numbers. If we have 34% of women, especially, having experienced one form of gender-based violence or not, between the ages of 13 and 15, we are looking at a majority of those are young boys and young girls. Is it available to this demographic?
So it is available on Google Play Store currently for Android users. We are still working on the others. And it is available because our focus really is on low-income families. And we do this because we realize they do not have the access. And beyond that, they also are not able to afford some of these services. And so we also do know that in terms of mobile use penetration in the country, most Kenyan families are actually able to access, the very basic mobile phones, but also phones that they can use for, to access internet. And so the way we do is we work with families as opposed to individuals, because we do understand that, kids are also involved in this, and we want children to be able to access or make a phone call. So what we do usually for most of our subscribers, we give them a number, a number that they can call.
So it's toll-free?
Currently, no, but we're working towards that. And you just basically need to tell us that, call us back and we'll call back, even as much as it's not toll-free. And so every person in the family has access to us in that way. Yeah.
Now, since we're talking about families, let's address the issue of minors. You receive such a callback request, and the person calling on the other line is a minor. Minors, a majority of them, do not own these gadgets. How does your team get to know that the person who actually made this call is Regina, who is 12 years old, and the perpetrator is the father? How do you go about that? How do you ensure that the family unit, survives this?
Yeah, so we have a very well-trained team dispatch team that will get to understand there are questions that they'll ask. I'm not able to talk about it now, but there are questions that they'll ask that will let us know who this person is calling and who the perpetrator, if the perpetrator is even in the room, we'll be able to know that. We're able to, for example, if the child needs to do something to provide first aid, very basic first aid, we're able to take them through that. So we have a very well-trained team that is able to manage these calls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about those who are either physically impaired? You know, do you, the capacity of the response team, do you have enough capacity actually to deal with those who may have, you know, challenges in expressing themselves? We have the deaf, dumb and blind who may not be able to express themselves as we do, or a majority do. Do you have that capacity there?
We might not have the full capacity as of now, because the way we work is we work with very different stakeholders within the industry, and not all these stakeholders have that capacity. But it's one of the things that we are working towards. But in the meantime, what we do is, as we are, you know, questioning and finding out who this person is, we are able to tell how fast we can respond to this person. One of the things that we are trying to explore beyond just the app is a wristband or a wristwatch, where people with, you know, disabilities are able to quickly just use, for example. Yeah. So we're exploring different tech that will enable us to reach different populations and those that are enabled differently.
Well, as a player within this particular value chain, I'm sure now you sit in a position where you can tell us where we're going in as far as matters of gender-based violence is. You know, we have the statistics, yes, but you are there on ground. Are we winning this, or are we still lagging, playing catch-up in this vice?
Unfortunately, we are really actually regressing. And as you talk about the statistics, 1 in every 3 women are, you know, going through GBV or have reported GBV. And only 20% of these have access. In fact, actually less than 20% of these have access to some level or form of justice. And among these, a very small percentage are actually getting that justice. You know, you can have the access, but getting it is a different thing. So we're actually not moving forward. And that's because reporting on GBV is very low. So we are not able to make a case so that we are able to, you know, find more resources to put into the fight. If it's prevention or if it's response, we are still really lagging behind in that sense. Now,
talking about reporting is low, and we have the statistics there, but then there's the issue is the evidence base, or rather the evidence base to build a case that actually can stand in a court of law is also one of the challenges that has been cited. So where do you come in, you know, in this, in ensuring that especially if it's sexual violence, there are do's and don'ts, and a majority appear not to really know or not in a position to understand exactly what it means not taking a shower or having that particular evidence. How are you coming in? You know, you may have the data, you may have the app, but how are you helping when it comes to really the situation on ground?
And that's the uniqueness of our intervention, is that we send emergency medical responders, and they're well trained to know how to, you know, pick this evidence and ensure that the evidence gets to where it needs to get to, and especially when the survivor actually wants to press charges. So we are able to contain that evidence and submit it based on now what the survivor wants to do.
You have picked up on something, or rather have picked up on something. You've said when the survivor wants. Now let's address other, you know, dispute mechanisms, resolution mechanisms. We have communities where they opt for kangaroo courts, and this has come up even with the new policy review when it comes to matters of gender-based violence. Right. And we have seen the judiciary pronounce itself, saying that when it comes especially to minors, they're really not advocating for this arbitration to be done at the kangaroo courts.
Exactly.
Have you experienced that? And, you know, is it regressing in the fight for justice of GBV survivors?
Yeah, we have actually experienced that, and one of the things that we are also trying to be careful about as a service provider, or, you know, people who are actually providing some intervention, is that we also do not come out to the community as a service provider that's fighting the community, because you find that the community also wants to consider the kangaroo courts. And if you're seen to be pushing for, a certain agenda, then you become an enemy. Because at the end of the day, we are really keen on protecting that child. We are, in terms of, providing medical intervention, we are keen on protecting that woman or that man, providing medical intervention so that they do not die, for example, or, go through a very long process of accessing healthcare. So that is our main goal. But beyond that, we work within the ecosystem. We work with different stakeholders who also provide psychosocial support, provide access to, judicial services. But we do see that because of culture, because of societal expectations, they tend to move towards the kangaroo courts, as opposed to actually wanting to find justice within our legal system. Yeah.
So for you, it's an intricate balance there as a service provider to go with the wishes of the victim, looking at where they live, or rather the ecosystem around them. Now let's talk about psychosocial support and especially integrating these survivors back into their communities. There's a lot of stigma around gender-based violence, in as much as we're making inroads to just doing away with the vice. How do we support survivors? Are we also looking into that?
Yeah, one of the things that we actually want to work around is, because that reintegration into the community or into, that family, sometimes goes beyond just, pushing this person to now go back to your family, because you realize there are probably some other contributors, mostly economical contributors. And so we want to also look at how do we support the survivor so that they're able to, support themselves and maybe get out of that situation, that GBV situation. Beyond that, looking at legal frameworks, how do we get this person from the situation where they probably will undergo GBV again, or from the perpetrator, because most of the time the perpetrators
is within the home, actually the home setup. That's where actually violence takes up more.
And even if they're arrested, most of the time, 1 or 2 days later, they're out. So how do we provide that safe space? And so we work with other organizations that have safe houses. So most of the time, that will be the first place that will take this person as we look at other areas of intervention. Yeah.
Whenever we speak gender-based violence, what comes to mind to a majority of people is that this is a female issue. But as we call it gender-based violence, man, woman, child, grown-up, we are all potential victims. How do we address that stereotype that, when we raise an issue of gender-based violence, we're talking about women? How do we bring men into this conversation? And more so, how do we, encourage men to report these cases?
Yeah, the thing is, men have been conditioned to think that they are, a strong gender, so they shouldn't cry, they shouldn't talk about their issues. And so reporting on GBV from men is even lower, very low, because of the stigma that comes, with that. And what I could say is, I think it's high time that men also talk about GBV as something that actually affects them, because they actually go through it. And GBV is not, the violence is not just, the physical violence. Yes. There's the emotional, there's the psychological as well. There's even economical, and men go through this. But the way our culture, and especially in Africa, the society is structured, is that a man should not go out and talk about, especially when it comes to, like, the violence comes from a woman. Why? How are you?
There is that notion, unapigwa na mwanamke.
And when they go reporting this, for example, in some of our GBV desks in the police stations, you find that they're not taken seriously. The first question will be, umechapwa aje na mwanamke? Aje. Like, now you're actually now victimized further. You're put to explain yourself why you're weak. Well, essentially, that's not the case. So I would really encourage men to report more, so that with this data, we are able to find better ways of intervening for them as well.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as we come to a close, Madam Oketch, I'd want you to just give us, What is your take on how far we have come in as far as the policies in terms of law? We have seen quite the changes under the new regime with Chief Justice Martha Koome, especially on the database and how it is informing, especially we go the judicial way, you know, seeking redress in that legal manner. Then also just give us that particular, you know, app where we can find it and the number that we can call as we come to close.
Right. So on the justice framework, the legal framework, I think there's a lot of goodwill. It's the mechanisms that are a bit amiss. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And the thing is, mostly you find that with different regimes, things keep on changing. So we need to get to a point where we have something that's actually working and working on a long term for all of us. So for the app, you can find it on Google Play Store for Android users. Just search for Ambulex. You should be able to find it. And you can call us on 0702 89 89 89.
And soon it's going to be toll-free.
Yes, that's what we actually want to do.
Do you have a timeline?
Should be in the next 2 or 3 months. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you have it. When it comes to matters of gender-based violence, as pervasive as it may be, well, stakeholders and from our guests this evening is that this is something that needs a collective action towards eradicating the vice. And gender-based violence does not necessarily mean just women. We are also talking about men, women, the young and the old. We are all candidates of gender-based violence. That puts a cap on the conversation tonight. Now we head on to matters sports with Daniel Wahome. But first things first, let's have a quick breather. We'll be back with sports.